And of course, Harry is expected to give evidence against the owner of the Daily Mirror newspaper tomorrow, but he was still asked to attend court today if he was needed. Didn't show, though, and his lawyer David Sherborne said his client was stumped by security and travel plans and had been celebrating Princess Lilibet's birthday yesterday. Sherborne also insisted that Ginger Winch's phone hacking claim against MGN was not inspired by a, quote, press vendetta. Further bombshell revelations were made about Harry, William and Diana's former butler, Paul Burrell, his ex-girlfriend, Chelsea Davy, Princess Diana and Michael Barrymore. So let me bring in Prince Harry's biographer now, Angela Levin. And you disagree with Harry's lawyer. Angela, you say this is a revenge mission against the press and that he might be doing it to please his wife.
Yes, he says it's his life work, which is a huge thing to say about trying to repair something or get rid of it when you're thousands of miles away. It doesn't make sense from the start. But I think he's now either self-destructing himself, which he's done a lot. You know, when he was in the army, he went to a nightclub that were women walking around with virtually no clothes on. You know, he sort of spoils things for himself. He's got a habit of doing that. Or someone is actually trying to take the carpet out from his feet and destroy him. I think that's what it is. I think it's so extraordinary and so hopeless. I don't actually believe that no one could find any people to guard him. I think that's just to sort of soothe it over a little bit. But I spoke to a friend of mine about the judge and said, what did he really mean about surprise? And she said, it's absolutely furious. It is very, very rude. And she said that it wouldn't help him with the case because everything was there, everything was ready. You don't just not turn up. And he's got a team that could have actually got something together.
Now, Angela, you obviously are Prince Harry's biographer. You spent a very long time with him, writing your book about him. You're the journalist who knows him best. Has he always had this hatred of the press and a desire to really end freedom of the press in Britain? Now, obviously, we know he has a huge hatred of the paparazzi photographers because he blames them in part for his mother's death. But did you sense back then that he also wanted to destroy British newspapers and freedom of the press as we know it?
Yes, he did hate them from quite a young age because, as he said to me, that his mother used to cry once she separated from the then Prince Charles and she would take her children somewhere. The paparazzis and journalists would crowd round her. Now, this was her fault because Prince Charles offered to pay out of his own pocket people to protect her, but she didn't want, she wanted the freedom. But of course, there wasn't freedom for her leaving him. And he couldn't bear it to see his mother burst into tears and cry. And I think that stayed with him as something that has been with him all his life, that he just doesn't want the press. Now, the odd thing is, of course, Meghan loves it. I mean, she
and
changes
Diana
her...
loved it.
Yes.
I mean, Diana worked with the press on a regular basis.
Of course she did. Yes, she would ring up. I was in the office and she'd ring a certain journalist and get him along or get a photographer along.
Which is great. I have no problem with that. I actually love the fact that she used the press. But I just think Harry has a naive impression of his mother's relationship with the media.
Yeah, well, he was only 12 when she died, and I think his image of her is to keep her in his mind as to what she was like then, which he hardly knew very much about him. William knew more, but he didn't have that ability to think like that. That's not his fault. He was just young.
Anything that goes wrong in Harry's life, he wants to blame the media. We saw a fascinating example of it in court today. It was from a story in the Sunday People, I think, around 2003, 2004, reporting on a disagreement between William and Harry over the relationship that they would have with Paul Burrell. William seemingly wanting to get to know Paul, thinking that having a relationship with Paul could be helpful. Harry saying absolutely not. Now, without any evidence, his team are going to insist that that story was a result of phone hacking. Actually, Angela, all that would have been required from that journalist was a couple of calls to certain royal sources or to the palace. And I think it's just very, very wrong to say that stories like that caused the fracture in the relationship between William and Harry.
Well, that's why he's in trouble, isn't it? Because we can't trust him anymore. We can't believe him anymore. He exaggerates. He tells lies. We saw that with Oprah Winfrey when he said that they got married, 3 days before the actual wedding, and that was all a lie. And the poor Archbishop of Canterbury had to stand up and say, no, that's not true. I just gave them a blessing. I did not marry them. It would have been a criminal act, and I couldn't do it. So you've got all these things throughout his life where he exaggerates or makes it up. So he's in real trouble. He's in real trouble when he goes to a court.
Tomorrow is arguably the most important day since Prince Harry left the royal family in terms of his reputation, because we have to admit, Angela, those interviews, let's call them interviews, I'd say they were friendly chats with a mate, but those interviews with Oprah Winfrey, with Anderson Cooper and with Tom Bradby contained no cross-examination. No. So how was Harry going to cope emotionally when actually Casey Green, representing the Mirror, says, hang on a moment, what you're saying isn't true, mate?
Well, he won't cope with it, will he? And that's why he's asked that there's only a very limited time, which he has decided upon, of actually being asked questions. And they've said to him, no, you can't do that. If it's a court like this, he has to answer. And they think it will go on for a day and a half, asking him questions, and he's not going to have it. But if he walks out, or if he's really angry or can't stand it at all, then there is no case, because if it's this type of case, then he has to answer all the questions that he's asked.
Angela, on a personal level, isn't that why his wife should be by his side
Absolutely.
tomorrow? Because he has no one to turn to for emotional support. He has no close friends in the UK anymore. There's not going to be any relative there supporting him, or even supporting him behind the scenes. So shouldn't Meghan be with him in court tomorrow? Oh,
yes, she should have been with him when he was trying to boost his spare. She should have been with him at the coronation. Even though I didn't want her with him, he needed her. You could see he was absolutely lost. It was a very, very embarrassing moment walking down the aisle. And he needs someone there who could give him advice. I mean, whether it be good advice or bad advice, I don't know. But what interests me is that why didn't his lawyer say to him, you can't change your mind on a Friday when you're supposed to be coming on Monday? Didn't he say this will be a disaster, sir?
Yeah, but isn't it the arrogance of Harry, Angela? He lives in his own little world. He is surrounded by yes people. He no longer has anyone in his life who says, actually, there is a way of doing things. I think the arrogance of him not showing up to court today, even though he was in the country, is off the scale.
It is, but it's also panic, and it's also, I think, obeying Meghan, because it has to have something to do with that silly party. No child of two knows what a party is anyway. I think that he was given an ultimatum. Maybe she did, as she did when she was in London, where she said, I can't cope anymore, it's all that, was crying, and he'll have given in. But, what did his lawyer say? He has to rise above that, otherwise he's just lost, isn't he?
Indeed. Well, look, Angela Levin, Prince Harry's biographer, you will be with me tomorrow for special coverage of the court case. We will be recreating what goes on in court.
Looking forward to it.
Harry's evidence, the verdict, tomorrow night from 9 p.m.